The maps of the solar system you remember from your childhood are a comforting lie. They depict a vibrant, orderly neighborhood of planets ending cleanly at Neptune, or perhaps the icy ring of the Kuiper Belt, surrounded by the empty black canvas of deep space. These maps suggest that once you pass the last giant planet, you have reached the exit. You have entered the void. But the edge of our system is not an edge at all. It is not a line drawn in the vacuum. Instead, beyond the reach of the solar wind, stretching halfway to the nearest star, lies a trillion-body frozen tomb. We do not merely live near this graveyard. We are entombed within it. Our Earth is a tiny, flickering candle burning in the center of an immense, cold catacomb of ice that we can never practically cross. This is the Oort Cloud. It is the functional boundary of everything we can ever physically explore about our own home, a region we can only understand through the falling icy messengers it occasionally drops toward our sun. We are not living in an open clearing of the galaxy. We are living in a hole, surrounded by a light-year-thick wall of ghosts. In 2012, we celebrated a victory that hadn't even truly begun. When Voyager 1 crossed the Heliopause, the headlines shouted that we had become an interstellar species. We popped champagne for a probe that had finally left the solar system. But this was a narrative convenience, a scientific participation trophy. We mistook a change in the weather for a change in the geography. The heliopause is nothing more than a magnetic border, the place where the sun's solar wind is finally neutralized by the pressure of other stars. It's a bubble of plasma, a thin, invisible membrane. Crossing it doesn't mean you've left home. It means you've stepped out of the house and onto a porch that stretches for 1 trillion miles. We are still firmly within the sun's gravitational grip. The real boundary isn't made of charged particles. It's made of ice and silence. And it's so vast that Voyager won't even reach the start of it for another 3 centuries. We've been congratulating ourselves for reaching the end of the driveway, while the forest ahead is a light year deep. Gravity is a much longer, much more patient hand than the solar wind. Beyond that magnetic bubble lies the true weight of our system, a region so vast that the distance between the Sun and Neptune is a mere rounding error. This is the fuzzy edge problem. The physical influence of the Sun doesn't stop. It fades in stages, and the most terrifying stage is the one we cannot see. The realization that we live inside a massive sphere of ice did not come from seeing the cloud, but from observing the bodies that fall out of it. In 1932, an Estonian astronomer named Ernst Öpik looked at the paths of comets and realized something was wrong. Comets are fragile. They are dirty snowballs that vaporize and disintegrate every time they pass near the heat of the sun. If the solar system is billions of years old, all the original comets should have been destroyed eons ago. Yet they keep coming. Fresh, icy, and full of volatile gases, they dive into the inner solar system as if they've just been born. Öpik suggested there must be a distant reservoir, a supply of frozen bodies waiting in the dark. 18 years later, Jan Oort, a Dutch astronomer, took this idea and turned it into a mathematical certainty. Oort analyzed the orbits of 19 long-period comets, those that take thousands or even millions of years to complete a single trip around the Sun. He noticed a chilling pattern. These comets weren't coming from the flat plane where the planets live. They were coming from every direction at once, forming a perfect sphere. And their furthest points from the Sun were clustered at distances so extreme they defied the imagination, roughly 20,000 to 50,000 times the distance between the Earth and the Sun. Oort realized that the solar system was not a disk. It was a ball a massive, hollowed-out sphere of ice where the planets are just a tiny, warm infestation at the very center. He estimated that there were at least 100 billion cometary nuclei out there. Modern estimates have since revised that number upward to over 1 trillion. 1 trillion worlds, each one a potential bringer of life or a harbinger of extinction, just waiting in the silence. To understand the architecture of this tomb, you have to stop thinking in miles and start thinking in shadows. There is a point, far beyond the last gasping breath of the solar wind, where the geometry of our world breaks. This is the inner gate, the Hills Cloud. It is not a thin ring or a simple orbit. It is a crushing wall of frozen mass that marks the transition from the flat, orderly plane of the planets to the chaotic sphere of the deep. Here, the sun's light is no longer a source of warmth. It is a cold, distant needle prick, barely distinguishable from the stars around it. In this twilight zone, the density of icy bodies begins to rise, forming a shell so massive it acts as a gravitational reservoir. This is the inner wall of the graveyard, a place where trillions of frozen projectiles are held in a delicate, agonizing balance. If the planets are the heart of the system, the Hills Cloud is the ribcage, vast, rigid, and enclosing everything we know within a vault of ice. It is a region of high-stakes instability, where the sun's grip is just strong enough to keep these objects close, but weak enough that the slightest nudge can send them screaming toward the inner worlds. But as you continue outward, the structure begins to dissolve into something even more alien. The gravity of the sun becomes so weak at these distances that the influence of the rest of the Milky Way starts to take hold. The galactic tide, the collective gravitational pull of the entire galaxy, begins to tug on these icy bodies, pulling them out of their flat orbits and scattering them into a giant spherical shell. This is the outer Oort Cloud. It stretches from 20,000 units to perhaps 100,000 or even 200,000 units away. At its furthest edge, the sun is no longer a blazing disk. It is merely the brightest star in a sky of total blackness. Here, the ice is so loosely bound to our sun that a passing star, or even a large molecular cloud, can steal these objects away or nudge them into a death spiral toward the inner planets. This is the comet pump. The Oort Cloud is not a static place. It is a dynamic, shifting reservoir. The Milky Way is breathing on it. As our solar system orbits the center of the galaxy, it moves up and down through the galactic plane like a horse on a carousel. This vertical oscillation takes about 30 million years to complete one cycle. Every time we pass through the denser parts of the galaxy, the midplane where the gas and dust are thickest, the gravitational tides squeeze the Oort Cloud. This squeeze sends a shower of comets tumbling inward. We are living through a cosmic game of Russian roulette that has been playing out for 4.5 billion years. Every major extinction event in Earth's history, every crater on the Moon, every scar on the face of Mars is a testament to a moment when the graveyard was disturbed. This Shiva hypothesis suggests that our very existence is punctuated by the heartbeat of the galaxy, a rhythmic shaking of the Oort Cloud that brings fire from the heavens to reset the clock of life on Earth. Consider the Voyager 1 probe. It is the fastest object humans have ever sent into the deep. It has been traveling for over 45 years, covering millions of miles every single day. We speak of it as our messenger to the stars. But the scale of the Oort Cloud makes Voyager look like an ant trying to cross an ocean. Voyager 1 has passed the Heliopause. It has entered the space between the stars' winds. But it will not reach the inner edge of the Oort Cloud for another 300 years. By then, its nuclear battery will be a cold, dead lump of plutonium. It will be a ghost ship, silent and blind, drifting through the dark. And it will take Voyager another 30,000 years to emerge from the other side of the cloud. For 30 millennia, our most advanced piece of interstellar technology will be nothing more than another piece of debris floating in the sun's graveyard. It will be surrounded by 1 trillion frozen worlds, and it will never see a single one of them, because the Oort Cloud is so vast that the average distance between any two comets is millions of miles. It is a crowded tomb, yet it is the loneliest place in the universe. But there is a darker secret hidden in the ice. We used to think the Oort Cloud was made entirely of our material, the leftover scraps from the birth of the sun and its planets. We thought these were the crumbs from our own table. But modern orbital models and chemical analyses of long-period comets suggest something far more haunting. We are cosmic thieves. When the sun was born 4.6 billion years ago, it wasn't alone. It was born in a crowded nursery, a cluster of hundreds or even thousands of sibling stars. In that cramped environment, the young stars were constantly brushing past one another, their gravitational fields overlapping and intertwining. During this chaotic infancy, the sun's gravity acted like a vacuum, reaching out and snatching icy bodies away from the clouds of its siblings. This means that a significant portion of the Oort Cloud, perhaps more than half of it, is interstellar. It is alien. The comets that occasionally light up our night sky, like Hale-Bopp or Hyakutake, may not be from our system at all. They are the stolen ghosts of dead stars, ancient travelers that were kidnapped billions of years ago and held captive in the sun's outer reaches. We are living in a stolen graveyard. When we look at the Oort Cloud, we aren't just looking at the history of our own solar system. We are looking at a museum of the entire solar nursery, a collection of artifacts from stars that have long since drifted to the other side of the galaxy. This theft wasn't a one-time event. Even now, the sun is engaged in a slow-motion trade with the rest of the galaxy, shedding its own icy children into the void while capturing the debris of passing stars. We are a part of a much larger, much more chaotic exchange than we ever dared to imagine. And the graveyard is still being visited. About 70,000 years ago, while early humans were already painting on cave walls and fashioning stone tools, a visitor passed through the tomb. A low-mass binary system known as Schultz's star drifted through the outer Oort Cloud. It came within 0.8 light-years of the sun, well within the boundaries of the graveyard. For a brief moment in prehistory, there was a second star in the sky, though it was likely too dim to see with the naked eye unless it flared. But its gravity was felt. As it plowed through the cloud, it would have disturbed the orbits of thousands of icy bodies, potentially starting a clock on a new shower of comets that won't reach the inner solar system for another 2 million years. We are constantly being brushed by the neighborhood. Every few million years, a star passes close enough to rattle the gates of the tomb. These close encounters are the ticking clock of our species. We exist only because the graveyard has been relatively quiet for the last few thousand years. This creates a terrifying realization about our isolation. We think of the edge of the solar system as a frontier to be crossed, a milestone on our way to the stars. But the Oort Cloud is more like a buffer zone of unimaginable proportions. It is a light year of nothingness and ice that separates us from the rest of the cosmos. To reach Proxima Centauri, the nearest star, we have to travel 4.2 light-years. But for the first entire light-year of that journey, we are still technically at home. We are still in the sun's backyard. The sheer volume of this space is hard to conceptualize. If you shrank the entire orbit of the Earth down to the size of a single penny, the Oort Cloud would still be a sphere 2 miles wide. Within that 2-mile sphere, the Sun is a microscopic speck of dust, and the planets are invisible. Think about that. Everything you have ever seen, every person you have ever loved, every historical event you have ever read about is contained within a space the size of a penny inside a 2-mile sphere of ice. This is the weight of the silence. We live in a tiny pocket of warmth, a bubble of light carved out of a trillion-body frozen catacomb. Everything we have ever achieved, every war we've fought, every love we've known has happened inside this hollowed-out center. We are like a family of mice living in the center of a vast, frozen mountain. We know the mountain is there because every now and then, a piece of ice falls from the ceiling and crashes into our living room. We call these comets. We study them. We name them. We marvel at their beauty. But we rarely stop to think about what they represent. They are the only things that ever escape the graveyard. They are the messengers telling us that the world is much bigger, much colder, and much more dangerous than our maps suggest. The Oort Cloud also challenges our definition of what a world is. We think of worlds as places like Earth, or Mars, or even Pluto, solid bodies with surfaces and histories. But the Oort Cloud contains more mass and more individual bodies than all the planets and moons of the inner system combined. There are objects in the Oort Cloud the size of mountains, the size of cities, and perhaps even the size of Earth itself. Some theories suggest that Planet 9, the hypothetical giant world lurking in the outer system, might actually be a captured Oort Cloud object, or a world that was kicked out of the inner system and now reigns as the king of the graveyard. There could be thousands of dwarf planets out there, dark and frozen, orbiting in a permanent midnight. It is a silent empire of ice, outnumbering us 1,000,000,000,000. These are not just rocks. They are the pristine, untouched building blocks of the universe, preserved in a deep freeze that has lasted since the dawn of time. As we look forward to the future of human exploration, the Oort Cloud stands as the ultimate psychological barrier. We talk about colonizing Mars, or mining the asteroids, or even building outposts on the moons of Saturn. These are monumental tasks, but they are all contained within the warm zone. They are all within the inner room. Crossing the Oort Cloud is a task of a different order of magnitude. It requires ships that can function for millennia. It requires a civilization that can think in geological time. To cross the graveyard is to leave the sun's protection entirely, to navigate 1,000,000,000,000 obstacles in the dark, and to emerge into a void that is even more vast. It is the ultimate test of endurance. We are currently a species that measures time in years and decades. To survive the Oort Cloud, we must become a species that measures time in eons. The Oort Cloud is the final reminder of our true place in the universe. We are not the masters of a vast solar empire. We are the inhabitants of a small, fragile clearing in a very dense and very cold forest. The graveyard at the edge of our system is not a wall, and it is not a boundary. It is a transition. It is the place where the sun's grip finally fails, where the light of our star becomes indistinguishable from the light of others, and where the frozen remnants of our birth and the stolen remnants of other stars' births wait in eternal silence. It is a place of infinite potential and infinite threat. It is the origin of the water in our oceans and the craters on our moon. It is the beginning and the end of the solar system. We will likely never see the Oort Cloud with our own eyes. It is too thin, too dark, and too far. We will never have HD photos of its trillion members. It will remain a world of mathematics and shadow, a ghost story told by the orbits of comets. but its presence is felt in every shooting star that streaks across our atmosphere. Each one is a messenger from the edge, a piece of the tomb that has finally broken free and fallen toward the light. They remind us that we are not alone in the dark, but we are surrounded by it. We are entombed in a light year of ice, a trillion frozen worlds away from the nearest neighbor, living out our brief, warm lives in the heart of a silent graveyard. As the sun continues its long journey around the Milky Way, it will continue to carry its graveyard with it. It will continue to steal comets from the stars it passes, and it will continue to lose its own to the galactic tide. The Oort Cloud is a living record of every encounter our system has ever had. It is a cosmic ledger, written in ice. And as we sit here on our warm blue marble, we should remember that the peace we feel is an illusion of scale. We are flying through the galaxy inside a sphere of 1 trillion potential impactors, held in place by the delicate balance of gravity and time. We are the inhabitants of the tomb, and the messengers are always falling. The silence of the Oort Cloud is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of 1 trillion things waiting. And in the cosmic scale of time, 30,000 years, the time it takes to cross the graveyard, is but a single breath. We are a part of the cloud, and eventually, like everything else in the sun's reach, we too will become part of the history written in the ice at the edge of the world. The graveyard is not just out there. It is our origin, our protector, and ultimately, our destiny. We are the children of the ice, living in a brief moment of warmth before the long, dark journey through the clouds begins. Every comet we see is a reminder that the gates are never truly locked, and the galaxy is always watching, waiting for the next time the tide turns and the graveyard wakes up.